Hey everyone, my name is Wedge and welcome back to Knowledge Pool. You guys voted on last week's video, Facebook, and Twitter. In an overwhelming landslide victory, this week's deck tech is budget modern. Disclaimer, this is modern. Yes, I'll try the best I possibly can to make this as budget as possible, but remember I do have to make it competitive as well. You won't see any $30 decks here, but you also won't see any fetch lands or Tarmogoyfs either. In fact, you can trade a Tarmogoyf for this entire deck and then some. Let me introduce you to green-white auras. The creature base is really simple, so we'll start with that. 4 Gladecover Scout accompany 4 Kor Spiritdancer and 4 Slippery Bogle. Yep, you guessed it, modern hexproof. The Scout and Bogle are lightning bolt proof, and the Spiritdancer benefits from the other 27 non-land permanents in the deck. Like I said, easy creature base. Let's move on. The rest of the deck, minus lands, are enchantments. To be more specific, enchant creature auras. We'll start with 4 Ethereal Armor. Makes perfect sense in a strategy like this. First strike is awesome, but the additional +1/+1 for each enchantment is just pure value. You can't go wrong with this for 1 mana. The other 1 white mana enchantment in the deck is a playset of Hyena Umbra. +1/+1 and first strike, again very useful. This time, however, the enchantment comes with Totem Armor. Great protection against board sweeps. Hyena Umbra helps you keep your valuable beater alive and its other enchantments intact. Moving right along to 1 mana green enchantments, we have a playset of Keen Sense, the Green Curiosity. Card advantage is always nice to have, and this grants it to your hexproof creatures pretty reliably. While you do have to deal damage to the opponent, there are a lot of decks that don't want to trade their early creatures, especially if they're mana producers. You should be able to get through with this at least once. Hopefully that'll be all the card advantage you need. Next up is 4 Rancor. Talk about a classic. This 1 mana enchantment is everything you want. +2/+0, trample, and it just never goes away. This is great value for 1 mana. You give your creatures the ability to be aggressive beyond normal means, and trample is not something to ignore. This accelerates your clock significantly. Very important card. The last 1 mana enchantment in the deck is a playset of Spider Umbra. The +1/+1 is great, and reach probably won't be that relevant, but this gives Totem Armor, just like the Hyena Umbra. You're paying 1 mana for an extra life on your creature and a bigger body. All upside here. There are 2 enchantments left in the deck, 4 Shield of the Oversoul and 3 Unflinching Courage. The Shield is a nice budget option because it gives benefits to any of your creatures. The Scout and Bogle both get +1/+1 and become indestructible. Very important against board sweeps. The Spiritdancer also gets +1/+1 but gains flying instead. Still a very relevant ability as it helps avoid combat with a lot of creatures in the format, especially pod targets. Unflinching Courage is just a late game bomb. +2/+2 makes all your creatures huge. Trample helps them beat Noble Hierarchs in the face, and lifelink forces the Storm player to copy Grapeshot that many more times. Just an amazing card for 3 mana. It's one of the strongest cards in the deck for sure. With creatures and enchantments out of the way, we move on to lands. We'll start with the mainstays that we're actually allowed to keep. A playset of Razorverge Thicket and Temple Garden are extremely important in securing your colors early game. Thankfully, your deck is pretty forgiving in this respect, not requiring double of any single mana symbol. To create both of your colors effectively, we also added 4 Brushland, 4 City of Brass, and 3 Gemstone Mine. The Brushland and the City of Brass will sting a little, but this strategy is hyper-aggressive. So if you care that much about taking damage, you probably have bigger problems. The Gemstone Mine will have 3 turns of any color mana you want, but then you should be stable enough to thrive without it. Add in 2 forests and you have the 21 land mana base. Okay, let me paint a picture for you. You start off with a little adorable puffball of a creature that no one would ever want to hurt. Cute, right? Well, what do you think happens when you give it a sword? And armor? And a gun? And maybe a bigger gun? And also a grenade? You get the point. It gets scary. That's how this deck works. It piles a ton of crap onto something that can't be targeted, and then just bashes your opponent in the skull. The deck plays itself pretty well. In your opening hand, you don't want any more than 2, maybe 3 lands. Also, you need a creature. If you don't have a creature, you either mulligan until you get a creature, or just quit and go buy some stuffed crust pizza. Seriously though, you need creatures. In addition, you're always the aggressor. I don't say this often, but in this matchup, I don't care if you're against Storm, Pod, Burn, or Battle-O-Wits, you attack always, forever. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk sideboard. This upcoming meta is going to be filled with Blue Moon decks. Blood Moon is pretty great against you, and there isn't much you can bring in against it. As a matter of fact, the best way to fight this deck is to board in some Forest and Krosan Grips to take out the Moon when it's played. Other than this matchup, you can board in pretty effectively against almost anything. Rest in Peace is pretty great against Living End and Storm. It keeps the creatures where they belong and stops Pyromancer Ascension from going off. Ever. Stony Silence completely shuts down Affinity, no Still Overseer ability, no Arcbound Ravager ability, not even Cranial Plating. It just destroys the deck. Next up is one of my personal favorite answers to Splinter Twin, Suppression Field. By forcing them to pay 2 mana every time they want to untap their Deceiver Exarch, you stop the combo indefinitely. Delicious. You also get to laugh in the face of everyone who thought this was a Modern tournament and brought their fetch lands. Control decks. You want to beat them? Play Gladecover. He makes control players cry. Turns off Sphinx's Revelation, turns off most of their win conditions. It's a nightmare. Just a horrible, horrible way to die. The last general sideboard tech I would advise is Path to Exile. Easily one of the best white removal spells ever printed. You can't go wrong with a couple of these in your board. Extremely versatile and helps deal with problem creatures like Voice of Resurgence and, I don't know, anything else ever. If you like this deck but want to build a more expensive version, here are some pricey replacements. You could start by switching out the City of Brass, the Brushlands, and the Gemstone Mines for Horizon Canopies, Misty Rainforest, and Verdant Catacombs. In addition, take out a Forest for a Dryad Arbor. It's just a good card. One of the biggest replacements is taking out Shield of the Oversoul for Daybreak Coronet. We wish we could have fit this into the deck, but it just costs too much money. Because you're adding the Coronet in, you should take out a couple more budget lands for some Wooded Bastions to make sure double white on turn 2 is viable. Remember that this is a hyper-aggressive strategy that never looks back. You start every game with one goal in mind. Bash your face in until you see stars. We hope you enjoyed this modern budget deck tech. Remember to vote below on Facebook and on Twitter for what kind of deck tech you want to see next week. Your choices are Legacy, Modern, Standard, and Budget Standard. If you have any questions about the deck or just want to talk about it, leave a comment below. I'll be around. As always, subscribe for the latest and most reliable Magic the Gathering information you could ever need. This is the Mana Source. I'm Wedge. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.